I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander. And today we'd like to talk to you about the benefit of giving up control. Now, that may sound like something that we ought not to be talking to you about, but in fact, we do so often want to control the circumstances and situations of our lives. And it is tremendously beneficial, and there is a wonderful benefit to our mind and to our body and to our spirit when we do embrace this concept of giving up control. And I guess for many people, that may sound reasonable, but they may have some questions about it. And we were just talking a few moments ago about how that could be interpreted. But we do, in so many ways, want to control the things that take place in our lives, the things that happen to us. And in fact, there are so many things out of our control. There is a wonderful release and freedom in the detachment of giving up control, isn't there?
Yes, there is. And the great spiritual leaders of all time have lived the lives of non-control, and they've deliberately not tried to control anyone. And of course, the Lord Christ would be noted for that in his actions throughout his life on earth. And I think Paramahansa Yogananda is another very good example. And all those gurus and those people from the East, teachers from the East, seemed more inclined to talk in that way than those of us in the West, didn't they?
So I think so often we think in terms of spiritual aspects, in political aspects, in mental aspects, that so much of life is about control.
Yeah.
And of course, we're taught to control our emotions and to control our feelings. And of course, we know that certainly there are reasons to do that. But sometimes we go too far in our desire to control. And I'm thinking now just about something that I speak a lot about, as you know, and that is not controlling the way that we feel. In other words, if we're sad, we're sad. If we're hurt, we're hurt. If we're depressed, we're depressed. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to lay down and throw a temper tantrum because we are adults, and so there is a way to deal with it. But this issue of giving up control over the way that we feel or the circumstances of our life, giving up control is in many ways a very freeing experience.
Yes, and just simple acceptance that everyone has a right to feel the way they do, to do what they do. And if we don't like it, we have the right to reject their ideas and to try and change what we need to change what we can. I taught at a modeling school many years ago, and we taught people, one of the first things we taught them was to assess yourself and see what you wish to have changed. Change that which you can, which you wish to, and then forget it. Forget the whole thing. And I think people just naturally do that without having to be taught in any school. We look at ourselves and see what we want different, and then we do it. It's like women put on makeup, men shave, we do whatever we do with our hair and so forth. And then we forget the whole thing because we've done the best we can. And that's true of all aspects of life. We do the best we can in everything, and then we give it up. We give it up to God, or we give it up to the other person, or we give it up to someone else, because we don't need that trouble anymore. We don't need that problem. We've done what we can to change it. And the same is true with the people in our lives. If we try and change someone else, we're in for a big fall, because we're not changing other people. Other people do what they want to do, just like people don't change us. We do what we want to do. And so if we waste our lives and our time trying to change others, it's an exercise in futility, isn't it?
It is, and it's taking away from people their freedom of choice and their birthright in so many ways. And today we speak a lot about tolerance and understanding and allowing people to live. But in fact, so many of us want everyone to live according to our way, and we need to really be vigilant and aware of that. And it is really important. And you spend a lot of time counseling, as do I, and in relationships. Just going back to this issue of controlling other people, how many of us enter relationships with the expectation of controlling our partner, or enter a marriage expecting to control the person that we're marrying and change them and control them in one way or another, or modify their behavior. And of course, we do the same thing with our children. And of course, I'm not talking about the formative years or the values issues of children, which are shared to a point, but then even at that point in time, our children have a right to determine their own values and to make their own decisions. And I'm amazed at how many people in counseling we encounter who come to grips, or have to come to grips with the fact that as their children move into adulthood and become persons within their own right, and certainly as they become adults, that their children, have the absolute right to be in control of their life and their destiny, and to not be subject to the control of their parents any longer. And that process is so vitally important. But going back to the relationship aspect, so many marriages and relationships are so damaged by the fact that we, either consciously or unconsciously, but in many, many cases consciously, enter into a relationship with the expectation of controlling someone and controlling behavior.
Yes, I remember a young woman saying one time about her husband, we have to train them, don't we? Meaning husbands. And I had to laugh because I thought, who is training whom in this union? Because it was more the opposite way. But it's such a waste of time and energy trying to change anyone, because we can value the difference. We can value the uniqueness of the other person. And you touched on free will. It's against the laws of God to go against anyone's free will. Creator God doesn't go against our free will because he gave us free will. And we need to honor that in all people, everywhere, and let them be. And if we see that someone is hurting we don't know what their destiny is. We don't know what their pre-birth agreement or their sacred contract before birth are or might be. And so we just have to let people be, and then we can more fully enjoy the uniqueness of other people, the uniqueness of the way lives go. And we can look at when people are into problems, unless they've asked for advice, we can just mind our own business, because we can just know that they're working through what they came to work through. And who knows what that might be. So it pays in many dividends in many different ways and in many different areas and facets of life that we follow through on those things.
Absolutely. And as we celebrate and honor the differences that we have and the diversity among ourselves and other people in relationships and in all aspects of life, we become richer for it. Yes. And it's absolutely true that we need to be able to express to others how it is we feel about their behavior as it relates to us. But their behavior and what they do and say and every aspect of their life is a matter of free will and their relationship with God and with themselves and with their evolving character and with their evolving spiritual being and reality and with their evolving mental understanding of life and all of its joys and its sadnesses. So we have to be willing to let people experience life. And so very difficult for us, especially in relationships with our children. It's so hard to let go. We want to control, don't we? We always we have the best ideas, and we just need to be very cautious of that. And we need to just bless and release people, don't we?
Yes, but if we have a rich life of our own, and a rich spiritual life, a rich physical life, a rich everything in our lives, and we're occupied, and our minds are occupied with our own things, then I think we're more apt to let our children be, or the people around us. It's not necessarily always just our children. It's whoever lives near us or with us or around us that we spend time with, that very often we'll think we need to change. But I think that it's so exciting just to see how people's lives are going and to see how people think and how they do. And you and I have discussed very often how these young ones are coming in, the babies are coming in, knowing what they want to do, just knowing things. And to me, it's so exciting to be with these babies and just to watch them play and interplay with them and see what they do. And they learn very quickly. I was walking my little grandson yesterday, who's 18 months old. And so the neighborhood is very clean and uncluttered. And he picked up 2 pieces of paper that he found and gave them to me. So then when we came to a trash receptacle, I gave them back to him and let him put them in the trash. And he knew that's what was to be done. And he was very delighted to do that. So even they just know these things. They know that the trash doesn't belong on the street, it belongs somewhere else. And they know in their homes certain things that it seems they're very advanced. But perhaps it's just because I've become less controlling. But it does seem that way to everyone, that all the babies who are coming in are more advanced, and I believe that they are. And I think that the parents are allowing them more freedom, and that's a wonderful thing. So it's a wonderful thing when we can let whoever the people around us are, whether they're babies or children growing or other adults, if we can just let people be and be themselves.
But that's so difficult for so many because of this control issue, because we believe that if we don't control the people around us, if we don't control our children and our spouses and our families and our friends, that we're somehow letting them down, when in fact what we're doing is we are unduly influencing them. And a fundamental of course, our faith and our psychological tradition and teaching is that this issue of free will and choice is a right that every person has at every aspect of their life. And our life has a series of choices, all of which have consequences, but those consequences are ours and ours alone. Although they may affect other people around us, we need to be able to detach from those consequences when they are not behavior that is necessarily ours, and allow the individual to do what they have to do. And I know I've worked with a number of families, as you have, that have had deeply troubled children and some really tragic things that have happened in young people's lives and young adults' lives. And it's very difficult to say, and it's very difficult to allow those people to go through what they have to go through. We provide them with support. We provide them with all of the positive thinking and prayers and all of the other things that can be given. But the fact is that all people at all aspects of their lives need to go through what they need to go through. And we need to let them do that. And we need to give up our willingness or our desire to control so much of what's going on.
Yes, and in giving up that control, we're listening to people and seeing what they have to say and hearing their viewpoint. And I think that's why so many young people are, we hear of the terrible tragedies on the campuses and other places today. And I think those young people just have never been honored by having anyone just listen to them and talk to them and honor them as a human being, as a separate person. And I wouldn't say that that's the answer. I wouldn't profess to have the answer to those terrible tragedies. But I do think that in the world today, we are too often just slough off what someone says or does, or everything is treated in a negative way that someone might do. And I've seen it in so many ways, and I'm sure that you have too, where people put each other down, and the children put each other down. And it's really hard for them because they never, and then if the parents put them down at home, then they're never honored, they're never validated. And when they're not, then they hit back at life. And I know that in working with young people, and we've all worked with young people in our lives, this is often true. When you see these children who are never validated, then they hit out at others, and they become the bullies, and they hit out at others because because their life is so unhappy. So they want to make others unhappy too. So if we can, each of us, just spread more love and joy in the world, then it perpetuates itself.
And create this aspect of self-esteem and self-value and self-worth, and instill that in ourselves and in others, then it does so much for all of life and all of society.
Yes, and we can look to success and emulate it, and then others will look to our success and emulate it. And so it's just that in itself is self-perpetuating, isn't it?
It is. An example is an issue of control, but it's an issue of non-control, because by example, we don't control people, but we give them the exemplification of something that they can make a decision to use as an example or to do something else. And so it gives to them a choice without imposing upon them a requirement of belief, and an important aspect. And just at this point in the program, we'd like to pause and offer you the opportunity to receive some literature so that you can continue to study the ideas and concepts that we're sharing with you today.
We would like to offer you the opportunity to receive one of these free booklets to further your understanding of the New Thought methods of confident living. Each month we will feature a different booklet, which will be mailed to you free and postage paid. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807.
Before the break, we were talking about being examples and this issue of exemplification. And early in the program, you made the statement that the Lord Christ and other spiritual leaders were, for most of us, depending on our faith tradition, of course, examples of the way that life is to be led, and life led not in control, but a life led with the exemplification of choices that people can make. And I think so often in the West, in the Christian world, one of the interpretations that we have in evangelization and the spreading of religion, and we certainly don't want to be negative about any kind of religion, but is that so often religious groups, and it's not unique to Christianity at all, that religious and spiritual groups and political groups and social groups and national groups will often see themselves and their ideas as being those that need to be set forth before people, and they want people to be like that. So they profess it and they proselytize it and they preach it and they instill it. But if we really look at the fact, even in the Christian tenet and life of Christ Jesus, as an example, or other wonderful spiritual leaders, as Mary Baker Eddy described the Lord Christ as the great way shower. And whether it's Christ or whether it's someone of a political stature, or if it's just you and me on the street, if we are the exemplification of our value system, if we are the exemplification of the right way to live, then those around us are able to make a choice to emulate that example or to reject that example, but the choice is theirs. And I think that's a tremendously important aspect of life, because we lead and we teach by example. And so often we think we lead and teach by the sword or by the fist or by the Bible or by whatever, and so many, and we spend a lot of time in our fellowship and we spend a lot of time in our counseling work trying to tell people that we're not here to tell you what to think. We're not here to tell you how to behave. We're here to give you options and you make the decision. And I think that this issue of leading by example is a process of perpetuating good and high and noble values, but giving up control of other people and allowing the other people freedom of choice to emulate that and to embrace that which they see a value in us or in someone else, and to follow that, and then to be like unto them, but not to be controlled by them. And I think that our finest spiritual leaders had that as a great intention, and never was it the intention through either fear or coercion or theology or whatever, or dogma, to force people into the belief system, but instead to say, this is my life, this is the way I lead it, this is what I think, this is my value system. And if you see value and purpose and nobility in it, then be like me. But you decide. And then you be like me, and I'm not saying be like Mike Costello, but you be like me because you choose to be, because it's your choice. And that, I think, is a magnificent way of giving up control. Because then whether people are embracing our concepts and ideas, and whether it's religious or spiritual or political or nationalistic, if we can lead by example and then allow those around us to make the choices. And I'm just thinking about those of us who have come from wonderful homes, and I am one of those that had a wonderful, magnificent childhood and home life. And my magnificent child and home life didn't come because things that were necessarily taught to me through learning. They were taught to me by example, and through the example of that life and that coming of age and growing in that environment, I said, this is the life that I want to have. And my life today is very much like that. And unfortunately, many people are emulating a lifestyle or a childhood that is quite the opposite. And so, but that's a choice. And that's a choice that we all have to make. But I think by creating the example, and I think parents can create that example of a magnificent home life, and then the children either accept it or they reject it. And then whether they accept it or reject it really is determined by whether those children choose within their own life to exemplify and follow it, or that they become influenced by something completely different. And we don't have the ability to control all of these things. And so often we think, oh, yes, we do. If we send them to military school, or we turn the television against the wall and we do some of these things. But the fact is that we can do certain things that are prudent and reasonable, but we must never, ever, ever take away this free will and free choice. And that I think this issue of exemplification and example is tremendously important.
Yes, and allowing each other person, particularly the children, to express their own individuality, because that's so important to them. And I think, again, I think that's one of the problems where we have problem children in the schools today. They've not been allowed to express their individuality. And the children who are unhappy have not been allowed to. And those people who go into business that they didn't want to, but they went because their parents wanted them to do certain things, well, that shows that that's a prime example where they've not been able to express their own individuality. And that's why we're each here, to develop our own path, to develop our own our own individuality, our own innate inner goodness of ourselves. And we're not able to develop that if we're not allowed choices. We need to allow the people around us to make choices. I know at our church, people laugh lovingly that you allow everyone to do what they want to do. It's like the gentleman who wanted to, 80-year-old gentleman who wanted to play the drums. He hadn't played his drums for 8 years and he said to his wife, I haven't played my drums for 8 years and I really would like to. And she says, well, find a group. And he said, where would I find a group? And they started going to our church and he offered to bring his drums. She said, fine. And so he bought a car so he could bring his drums. And so that was a wonderful thing. And that really made an impression on a lot of people, that in a positive way, that yes, you allow people to do what they feel they want to and need to do. And then by expressing what they want to do lovingly, it just spreads more love in the world than in our church and out into the world. So to allow people individually to express whatever is within them is such a very wonderful thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it gives people the control over their own life, and at the same time it allows them to give up the need of controlling.
Yes.
And so it's a very interesting
give and take.
Give and take, it is. Because as we give up control, our lives become more controlled, but they become controlled not by us, but by the good and the right and the wonderful things that should and would happen to us. And we can allow that to happen, and we can believe that that's going to happen in the midst of every circumstance. We can believe it in financial tragedy. We can believe it in personal tragedy. Always, if people give up control and we give up control, then the power and the grace of God with our grace and power come together in a magnificent, wonderful way, and needs are met. And we just need to get out of the way. And we need to understand that fully and completely.
Yes, and when we do, then everyone is happier. And even the earth reverberates with ever greater light and happiness. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference throughout the earth how one person acts, just how one person sends out love and light, doesn't it?
It does. Well, and that has to do with this issue that we talk so often about, and New Thought talks in metaphysics teaches about vibration, and that is that our thoughts and our actions are creating vibrations, and those vibrations are setting in motion the feelings that we have, the feelings that we have when we walk into a room, the feelings that we have that spark creativity and the positive aspects of life, and the negative aspects operate in the same way. And so that negative energy creates a negative environment. And so as we create this positive vibration, and one of the things that we've talked about a lot, and we don't have time in this program, we're almost at the end, but we've talked about the issue of collective consciousness and the fact that as we put more minds together, as we put 1 and 2 and 5 and 10 and 20 and 100 and 1,000 people together who are of like mind, the vibration that's created by their heart and their mind and their life reverberates and fills an area. And the greatest example is these wonderful services where there's spontaneous healings. And it doesn't matter what the denomination or what the background is. When people come together with a healing consciousness, then healing takes place. And it is not that the power is more present there. It is that there is more concerted power that is united with the divine power that brings about this vibratory rate and increases the vibratory rate to such an extent that it affects all of those around. And we do that when we walk into a room where we feel very welcome or very warm or very happy. In another case, we walk into a room where we feel very cold or dejected. Or we walk into the presence of a person and we can feel, in many cases, very quickly whether we are received warmly or not. And all of that has to do with control, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it has to do with our ability and willingness to give up control and to be willing to walk into every room and to be able to come up to every person and to deal with everyone, and understanding that everyone is going to be different and that some people are not going to be welcoming and some people are not going to make us feel good. But the fact is that as we give up that control of our lives and of life around us, it does become a wonderfully freeing experience.
Yes, and we're all happier when we don't try to control others. There's times in business and in business aspects of our lives where we have to take a stand and we have to say what we believe in. But when we do that, we don't have to really exert our energy over much. We just state our opinion. We state what we feel to be true. And then we let others have that same privilege. And then there are those people who don't allow others to state their opinion. But that's really their problem. And it's truly a big problem for them, because those who do allow others are ever so much happier and so much more is accomplished. And good comes about as a consequence.
And it goes back to the issue of control, because so many believe that they are going to, if they control the circumstance or situation, it's better, where in fact, just as you said, by releasing the control, then creativity flows, goodness flows, blessings flow, abundance flows, all of the positive attributes and aspects of the universe and life are accessible and available to us.
Yes, and everyone is happier, and when the people around us are happier, we're happier. So it is truly just reverberates throughout, doesn't it? And also, we owe it to others to not try and control them. We owe it to other people to let them make their own decisions. Again, whatever our church might be, it's a spiritual aspect of living, the spiritual aspect of being, that we need to do that. And we need to do it for everyone. And we need to do it for children. We need to do it for everyone.
We need to be respectful of differences. We need to increase and celebrate diversity. And we need to give up the need that we believe that we have to control every circumstance and situation.
Yes, we do well if we control ourselves. And I know most of us like to be self-disciplined. And some of us are more disciplined, self-disciplined than others. But those of us who think we're not self-disciplined usually are the most disciplined. Isn't that true?
That's absolutely true. Yeah, and so when we believe we have the most control, or when we often behave as though we have the most control, we have the least control. And those who don't want to control and have the need to control circumstances are the freest and the most positive individuals who are able to enjoy life.
And happiest.
And the happiest, yeah.
And that's the important aspect. It's how happy are we and how happy are the people around us. I think a good measure is how happy are the people around us, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we can measure that and we can see that, and we often have opportunities to see how happy those around us are. And so we invite you to give up control over your life and circumstances and situations, and trust the fact that good and wonderful things are accessible and available to you. We hope that the information that we've shared with you has been useful to you, and we look forward to seeing you the next time.
Mike and Iris would like to extend a cordial invitation for you to join them this Sunday morning at 11 a.m. for our weekly celebration service at the beautiful Seaport Marina Hotel at the corner of Pacific Coast Highway and 2nd Street, adjacent to the Marina Pacifica and Marketplace shopping centers. There will be a guided meditation, prayers, spirited music, and a dynamic, life-changing New Thought message. Please join us this Sunday. You will be warmly welcomed into the company of like-minded, positive, and uplifting people. And remember, whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can attain it through confident living.